so we're going to go ahead and get started. If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Therese Butler. I'm president of our HOA, and so I'd like to call this Board of Directors meeting to order. Sitting next to me on my right is Joyce Howard. She's our treasurer. On the other side of me is Dan Lineker. He's our senior vice president. To the left of him is Mark Eckert, director. Going across, invisible man right now, we think he might have gone down to Desert View Theater instead, so we'll be expecting Don shortly. And then we have Campbell Cheney, our assistant treasurer, and next to him is Chuck Kill, our secretary. Continuing forward, Walter Yazzie, our general manager, and next to him is Diane Flores, our recording secretary. At this time, we'll enter into the business meeting portion of our meeting. The first item on the agenda is to approve 2 sets of board working meeting minutes. In August, the board did meet 2 times, on August 3rd and on August 30th, to cover specific items. Those minutes have been reviewed, edits have been made by the board, and so may I have a motion to approve those working meeting minutes? And a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion among the board? Is there any discussion in the audience? There being no discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. At this time, I'll now turn the meeting over to our general manager, Walter Yazzie.
Thanks, Therese. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go over my general manager report, which actually there's a copy up here by the door. So I'm just going to fly through some of the main points, and if you want more details, just take a copy on your way out. All right, for going over the staff, accounting. Accounting is, of course, working on finalizing the 5-year plans, and we're working on all of the budgets right now, so we're pretty busy there. Also, accounting is working on tax depreciation for our tax return, and also looking at a purchase order process for our new software, Total E integrated. I think you've heard about that for several months. Administration, Diane here has put out a call for candidates, for the board candidates. If you're wanting to put your name in the hat, you've got until 4 p.m. on Wednesday, October 12th to get your resume in. Again, I mentioned the new software, Total E integrated. We continue to work and get ready to bring that on board. We were planning to do that October 3rd, but now we've pushed that to November 1st. So we'll put out information to the community how that will affect you when we get that new software, once we get more details. But one thing you can do for us right now is the new software will require each of you to have your own email address. Now, there's some residents that share email addresses, but the new software is going to require you to have your own email address. And this will actually be beneficial to you because it will separate your calendars. It'll make it so it's more individual to you, and it'll just be a better experience for you to personalize your account. Common areas. You might have seen they've torn out flowers. Yesterday I went by, I seen them tearing out flowers, and so all they're doing is changing out the flowers from the summer to the winter type flowers. So things will get colorful again once they put those back in. Out front, you probably noticed that they cut the grass really short. You know, they do that because they're getting rid of the summer grass and changing to the winter grass, so they have to cut it short, and then they've already put the seed down, and that's why they're watering a lot, because they have to keep that new seed wet until it starts growing. So it'll get green here in a little bit. The fitness center, a lot going on at the fitness center, a lot of nice activities. So one of the things they've got coming up here on October 20th is a red light laser therapy guest speaker. So if you're interested in that, that's going to be October 20th at 1 p.m. Food and beverage, a lot of things going on with food and beverage and lifestyle. So Oktoberfest is on the 13th of October. Austin Owens returns on Monday evenings at the Mountain View Bar and Grill, that's here. Lifestyle, we got kind of every year we do a club registration. And so if you're a club, if you're part of a club, just make sure your club registers. And they're planning to hold that registration here in the ballroom on October 20th from 12 to 4 p.m. So make sure, if you have any questions, Mandy is the person to contact. The I Don't Want It sale is going to be on October 15th. There's still slots available, so if you want to come out and sell some stuff, please sign up there. Health Fair is on October 22nd. Banquets, we've got a wine dinner is October 18th in Ballroom East. Tickets are on sale now. We also got a seafood boil event on October 25th. The theater is under renovation right now, but it should be done at the end of the month. So October 1st should be our very first show there. Shine On Floyd is the show, so please get your tickets if you like Pink Floyd music. Sasso also returns, so their first performance is going to be on October 8th. So there's a lot to do, a lot of things, activities for you to participate in. Moving on to golf. Golf maintenance, of course, the big thing right now is the Mountain View Golf Course is under overseed, and they will open back up on October 10th. When Mountain View opens up on the 10th, the preserve closes on the 10th, and it'll be closed until the 30th of October for the same process for overseeding. Golf operations. We've got a multi-vendor fitting day coming up, and that's on December 2nd. Now, if you're interested in golf rates, those have been decided. You can go to the golf shop and they can give you what the 2023 golf rates are. There's also a special rate for annual pass holders if you buy your pass before November 1st. So definitely go to the golf shop and see what type of deal you can get there. With Club Life coming on, they have what they call X-Life benefits. And if you want to know about X-Life benefits for you golfers, that's going to be October 5th at the Desert View Theater, and they're going to have two different presentations, or two different times, same presentation, two different times, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. They also have a Nine and Dine program beginning November 2nd, which sounds pretty good. And then a subject that's near and dear to me, we are looking for an assistant general manager. So we again are using a search company to go out and search for that person. Those resumes that close out on October 17th, and then we'll be reviewing and starting the interview process. The flu shots are going to be available to you. Flu shots on October 6th, and this is in conjunction with Desert Life Pharmacy, but you need to sign up online. And you can find that information in the Monday message to sign up for your flu shot. And you also may be able to get a Moderna booster if they still have those available. And if you didn't know, we have a new marketing manager. That's Michelle Pendleton. And she has come in at a busy time because not only does she have to do everything marketing does, but because of the new software, she's also working on building our new websites. I'm almost done here. Operations. Again, we've mentioned the Desert View Theater being renovated. They put new carpet in. They put the hearing loop back in, and they reupholstered the seats. So carpet's in, hearing loop's in, and seats are reupholstered. They're just now, they're putting them back together because they're all in pieces right now. So they should be done by the end of the month. We also have another project that we're working on, which is with the company Mission Still, and what they're going to do is build covers for all the golf cart parking areas here at the Mountain View and at the Preserve in the areas where they park the carts in the evening. So So we're working with them. Right now, permits are at Pinell County, and you know how quick that goes when things are at Pinell County. So we're waiting on that approval. Let's see here. Another of interest, a couple more large projects that may affect you are the seal coat project that I do every year. So seal coat project's going to start on October 10th. And I have this down here in the notes, so you probably don't have to take notes, but if you're in unit 17, 31, 33, 43, 45, this seal coat project will affect you. And if you use the Lago del Oro cart path, or park at the dog park parking area, or at the preserve parking, those will also be seal coated at some point. So I think on the Monday message there's a map and days on when that's happening. Another thing of interest, along Peregrine Road up at the preserve, there's a large section of road that's sinking, and we're working to get that contract and get that repaired. So just hang in there with us. We're working on getting that set up with the contractor for repair. And finally, if you didn't know, we have a new patrol captain. Dale Tate is our new patrol captain, and he's busy doing all the patrol things. And in October, he'll also be helping out with the Idle Wanted sale, the Master Gardeners plant sale, and the health fair. So in addition to his daily work, we add other things onto his staff. So he does a great job. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Walter. And we'll now turn it over to our Director of Finance, Terry Dempsey, for our finance report.
Thank you, Therese. Good morning, everybody. So what we're going to go over today is August financials. And so to start off with, our summary, our income before depreciation for the month of August was a subsidy of $56,000. That's $16,000 worse than budget. Restaurants had a subsidy of $75,000, which was $37,000 worse than budget. Golf had a subsidy of $97,000, which was $38,000 better than budget. Fitness, theater, lifestyle, and in total had a subsidy of $20,000, which was better than budget by $1,000. That's basically all. I don't know if you can see that. That's all these numbers here we're looking at. Other income for August had a $6,000 subsidy, which is this number, and that was, and year-to-date is over budget by $33,000 income. There was an approved credit that was given for a violation in August, which caused this number to be a little less than what budgeted is, and it was like for $4,000. So. Next slide, please. As far as lots, there were 4 new home sales, bringing year-to-date 2022 to 27. We budgeted for 25, so we're beyond that now. There were 11 resales in August, bringing year-to-date to 137, and we projected 186 for 2022. And things have slowed down in that category. We saw it a little faster during the beginning of the year. We were running in the upper teens, low 20s on a monthly basis. Now we're down to 11, so we'll see if that picks up a bit or what happens with it. But from what the economy is doing, it probably won't pick up, I don't think. Next slide, please. On your handouts, it might be a little different. I'm not sure if you have a chance to change this around. I just changed it around so it's more legible. It's hard to see some of these numbers when you put them up on the screen. So going over revenues, we did a reforecast in July for 2022. So some of the items that I'm comparing here are going to be reforecast to what I'm projecting as a 2022 projection. The 2022 projection basically is year-to-date August information, and then taking September through December reforecast information and coming up with a projection. So that'll be a little different than what the actual reforecast was. Okay. So let's see, my projections, we just went over that. Operating revenue reforecast for 2022 is, it's cut off, I'm sorry. For 2022 was 13 million, thank you, 13,575,000. Projection is 13,616,000, so a little bit better than projection by $41,000, but well short of what our budget was, which is 13,859,000. Okay. Currently, our only amenity that is trailing reforecast revenue is our theater. That it's the other ones are ahead of budget, or sorry, ahead of reforecast. But theater's been closed, so that one's been trailing the reforecast. Okay. Next slide. Going through expenses, we had reforecast expenses of 13,548,000. I'm saying that the projection is going to be 13,614,000, which is greater than the reforecast by $65,000, and greater than our budget, which we had budgeted at 13,341,000. So restaurants expenses, G&A expenses make up the most of the expenses on the soberages. The cost of goods sold, labor, and consumables in restaurants seem to be the driving factors for the restaurants being over forecast. G&A being over forecast as a result of one, labor, and two is executive recruiting, which was for Jerry McDonald, and that wasn't in the budget or in the reforecast. So, our income before depreciation reforecast is $26,000, which is down here. This is what we had anticipated. We're only going to come in, I'm thinking, around $2,000 based on what we did in August. Our budget was $518,000, so it's quite a bit, still quite a bit off budget actually. Next slide. Okay, so restaurants has a reforecasted subsidy of $471,000, and I'm projecting the subsidy to be $478,000. Budget was a subsidy of $270,000. Again, high cost of goods, labor, and consumables, which are basically takeout packaging, is what's driving that. The restaurant revenue is falling short of budget, and basically they need more residents to come out to the restaurants and enjoy them and spend some money out at the restaurants, and that'll help the revenue pick up a bit. They're very nice restaurants, so you get some more people out there. I know they try hard to get people out there with different incentives or entertainment type things like trivia night, wine dinners and things like that. So just make use of them. Golf has reforecasted a subsidy of $731,000, and the projection of the subsidy will be $740,000, and budgeted subsidy of $468,000, which is this line here. And this is primarily due to expenses being very high for seed, fertilizer, chemicals, things of that nature, which we've seen double in price over the last year. And we're hoping to see this get reduced when Club Corp buying power kicks in, and it should be September we start seeing some reduction in some of these areas, hopefully. That's what we're looking forward to. Theater has a reforecast of a profit of $90,000 and a projected profit of $94,000. Budget was $84,000, so theater's doing okay. Fitness was reforecasted at a subsidy of $110,000. Projection is a subsidy of $112,000, and budget was a subsidy of $136,000. Lifestyle was reforecasted a subsidy of $133,000. The projection is a subsidy of $131,000, and budget was subsidy of $116,000. Again, Lifestyle Group works hard to provide entertainment and for the residents, and to participate, enjoy yourselves in those types of entertainment things, help them out a bit as far as the revenue goes. Total amenities, we had a reforecast of $1,355,000. Projected it'll be about $1,368,000, and budget was $908,000 subsidy. So quite a bit difference. And what we're finding is a lot of that has to do with these high cost of goods, expenses coming in. A lot of our vendors are charging us for trucking and bringing things in as far as the fuel surcharge, things of that nature. So it's starting to add up quite a bit. Next slide. So this kind of shows our monthly subsidy or profit. As everybody knows, around July to November, everybody kind of June through July, August, everybody's gone, and then it starts picking up again in September timeframe. So that's when we see this area here is our sweet spot as far as more residents being around, and then obviously it drops off. What we need to start looking at is getting this drop off to not be so much. We have to bring this back up into this area, and to do that, obviously Club Corps should help us with that, I would think. So we'll see how that goes. It's one of the important things that we have on in the coming year. Next slide. So for our operating expenses, G&A was reforecasted at $2,172,000. The projection is a subsidy of $2,156,000. We had the executive recruiting which wasn't budgeted, which kind of drove that up a bit, and also wages since we had a different wage category when Jerry was here. Facilities was reforecasted at a subsidy of $1,615,000. Projection is $1,595,000. Natural gas, electricity costs are coming in higher than what was expected, and so that's driving up the expenses on that. Common area was reforecasted at $1,000,001, and the projection is $1,002,000 as far as expense. Common area now has a new problem. They have to remove any silt or debris that they collect, and they used to be able to put it on a piece of property that was owned by Robeson, but they can't do that anymore, so they have to find another place to put it out in Tucson somewhere. So they have to look for a spot to actually get rid of the silt that they clean up. So that's going to cost us extra money. Patrol was reforecasted at $303,000. Projection was $300,000. That's relatively flat. Okay. Next slide, please. So this kind of shows our operating expenses. The green lines are what I'm projecting, $2,156,000. The blue line is what was reforecasted, which is $2,172,000, and budgeted of $2,097,000. So off budget and off reforecast. Kind of shows the reforecast a little bit higher. So we'll do this type of projection every month and see where we're going to end up for the year and get a closer look. Facilities is $1,595,000 in expenses compared to reforecast of $1,006,000. Budget was $1,575,000, so projection was getting pretty close to actually what the budget was. The common area, they had a projection of $1,002,000, reforecast of $1,198,000. Look like they're coming in around $1,002,000, and their budget was $1,001,000. And patrol, as I said, was relatively flat. So, oops. Next slide, please. Wages. This is probably one of our, probably should start to be our lead item because it is one of our more expensive items, and we have budgeted $5.9 million for wages. We're coming in. We had reforecasted $5,574,000, but based on this past, based on August, I'm projecting we'll probably be more like $5,662,000. So that's a miss by about 1.59% on the wages. Burden, we're looking at a projection of $1,223,000 compared to a forecast of $1,275,000. And our burden is basically all of our payroll taxes, our payroll taxes, our workers' comp, and medical portion that the HOA pays for the employee. Okay, we had just so everybody knows, we did have a staff meeting last Thursday, and in that staff meeting, we emphasized controlling your costs, controlling your wages. It's going to be hard for some of the managers because they have to balance. It's like I kind of said to them before, it's not like the old days where you could just tell people, hey, I go home. You're not really worried about what they think or what they care or anything like that. So it's like, why do you want to quit, look at somebody else? It's not that easy anymore. There's got to be a balance between giving people the hours that they need to survive on and what they need as a job, and also what you need to do as a manager as far as coming in and being fiscally responsible with that. So we emphasize that, try to make sure you have that balance. And then the other thing we mentioned is that any other expenses that you have that are more of a want than a need, push those off till after the new year as much as possible. So, okay, so that's where we're at for the financials. Okay. Oh, sorry, you're backlit there.
I'm sorry, I have a question. We offloaded all the golf employees.
Sorry?
We offloaded all the golf employees too. We didn't. I thought that was part of the deal.
January 1st.
January, okay.
Yeah, August 1st, they took over the
Could
man.
you adjust these numbers for that?
Will I? No.
No, we're paying,
But we still pay for them.
okay, but
January 1st, we still pay for the employees.
we pay through the other people, though, right?
We still pay them.
Just a transfer.
I think we should see what that is, that's all.
Oh, it's right on here. I mean, there's nothing, it's right on here because we pay the same amount. You're going to get the same reports. The only thing that's going to be different on our reports is going to be a management fee to Club Life, that's all. You're going to still see the financial reports the way they are. It's not going away.
Okay, thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
We're going to move on to old business now. If you recall, annually, we generally have ALC guideline revisions. Those went out in June for the guideline proposed changes went out in June for the 30-day comment period for all members. That comment period closed. Here today is Vicki Eller to go over the results of what the comments showed and what we will be approving for the ALC guidelines.
Thank you, Therese. I'd like to take a moment at the start here to recognize and excuse me, thank the members of the ALC committee for all the hard work that they put in. They spent an extraordinary amount of time revising this guideline document. The work has taken over a year. This is a dedicated group of volunteers, homeowners like you, who devote themselves to the community. And when newcomers see SaddleBrooke for the first time, they inevitably comment on how nice the community looks. The ALC is one reason that this development continues to shine. Next slide, please. After months of rewriting and editing, the guidelines were posted for review to the community, and surprisingly, only 96 comments were received. That's roughly 3% of the homes in HOA2. Still, those people who did express their opinions felt strongly about them. and we appreciate the interest and the time they took to make the comment, and we appreciate their input. Next slide, please. This slide speaks for itself. The responders felt strongly that saguaro should remain as an option, as a focal landscape element, and the committee has agreed. Next slide, please. Many comments that we received were related to why the ALC was involved with animals and dogs in particular, and what was meant by boarding. We had made a point of saying that kennels and boarding were not allowed. In writing this section, the ALC was referring specifically to commercial kennels and not pet sitting by your neighbors or family. The county limits households to 4 dogs or pets. Any more than that requires a commercial kennel license. And the CCNRs don't allow for commercial activity. The CCNRs assign responsibility for this function to the ALC and states, I'm paraphrasing here, that only a reasonable number of pets may be maintained on any lot as domestic pets, no commercial use. It also gives the ALC sole discretion on whether an animal or a bird is recognized as a house or yard pet, and if that animal is a problem or a nuisance, and whether the number of animals on the lot is reasonable. Further, it says that any decision rendered by the ALC shall be enforceable in the same manner as the other restrictions contained in the CCNRs. Next slide. In 2019, the ALC committees of both HOA 1 and HOA 2 worked together to create a uniform color palette for all of SaddleBrooke. We've been using those colors since November of 2019. Since then, both HOAs have received requests for a greater variation in the colors that are included in the palette. And in response to those comments, HOA 1 added 4 new colors to the palette, and they have also been adopted by HOA 2. They're Dunn Edwards colors, and those are warm white, Carrara, faded gray, and miner's dust. These are all off-white and light gray colors, and they can be viewed in the front office. HOA 2 ALC made the decision to allow the preserved color schemes to be used in all of HOA 2 with the same restrictions that apply to the preserved homeowners. And that is that if a color scheme is selected, that all of the colors in that palette must be used as they're described, with no substitution of paint colors. You can't swap anything between schemes nor add anything that's not included. HOA 1 has decided that they will not allow the preserved colors, and in that respect, the 2 HOAs are no longer uniform. Next slide. Again, the CCNRs place responsibility for signs with the ALC, and statements that we received comments about changing the size and various things about signs. All of those were changed to comply with state statutes. Comments were made that people wanted to eliminate all political signs, that they wanted only the American and Arizona flags to be allowed. And again, these things are regulated by state statute and are not rules that are created by the ALC. Next slide.
Do we take a motion now? Is that what we do? And then we ask questions? Is that okay?
Yes.
I'll just, I'm Dan Lindiger, and I want to really say a lot of thanks for Vicki for all the work that, again, she and her entire committee put into this. I'll go back to one comment though. The dog barking thing was a big deal, 26 comments, and that was really at the beginning of the comment period before people understood what a kennel meant. They thought kenneling would be, hey, I'm going to take care of my neighbor's dog for a week while they're gone, that kind of stuff. That's not what it meant. We clarified that, and really the comments almost went away. So I think it was a clarification issue that caused those 26 comments. The saguaro stuff kind of is on its own. we get it, and that's the reason that Swaro was taken off or put back on the focal plant or focal tree capability when you landscape your front yard. So anyway, thank you very much for that. So I'll make a motion that we approve these guidelines, proposed guidelines, as suggested by the ALC committee.
I second. Okay, there being a motion that's been made and seconded, is there any discussion among other board members? Is there any discussion among members of the audience? There being no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Before you leave, Vicki, I would like to take this opportunity. Vicki has been chair of the ALC committee for two years and served on the committee for a number of years prior to that. She had to take over the committee during the complete shutdown of operations in 2022. And it was under Vicki's leadership with the ALC that she was able to work with staff and with her committee members to put many of the processes that used to be required to be done face-to-face online. So you can do the majority of your permitting processes, you can get questions answered, all via online these days. And Vicki has recently announced she's retiring from this committee. So I just wanted to take this time to acknowledge all the great work you've done and the leadership you've given to this community. Thank you very much. Okay, we're moving on to new business. The first item under new business is to approve Ray Adams to the Finance Committee and the Rules and Regulations Committee. Is Ray here today? Ray, I want to thank you very much for being willing to volunteer to serve on 2 committees. That's very honorable.
Does he get more money if he signs up for ALC as well? Like a trifecta.
May I have a motion to approve? And a second, please.
Second.
Okay. A motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members? Any discussion among members of the audience? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is to approve a revised procurement policy, and under this, I'm going to turn this over to Joyce Howard, our treasurer.
Thank you. The procurement policy has a couple of revisions in it. There are a couple of places where we will now allow contracts to be entered into for more than 1 year if they have proper authority, which basically means a board level, not complete board level, but president, vice president approval to do that. And that's helpful in certain cases in order to get a longer term commitment. And the policy is also being revised to allow for auto renewal of policies, again with the appropriate approvals. We have put in a new chart, a new table on the approval levels. It kind of simplifies things and clarifies who has to approve things that are over budget at what level, who has to approve things that are unbudgeted and at what level. And we've also added in there the levels at which Club Corps will be involved in approvals. So as Terry was mentioning earlier, the HOA is still responsible for paying all of the bills related to golf. We will still be ordering things, but they will be approved by Club Life once they're at a certain level, and they will be all done under Club Life relationships with vendors. So that's the benefit that we're getting there. But we needed to put them into the approval process to make sure that was happening. So those are the basic changes that we've made to the procurement policy. And so with that, I would make a motion to approve the revised procurement policy.
I second. Is there any discussion among board members? Is there any discussion among members of our audience? Being no discussion, all those in favor, aye? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is we had recently put out email blasts about the fact that we have 3 individuals who serve on our election committee. They've been doing this for a number of years and they are ready to retire. And so it's a small committee. They really function, unless we have special elections, they function during the fall while we are running our board elections. And so I would ask for a motion to approve Mike Brenny, Cash Striplin, and Paige Shajnuk. I'm sorry, Paige, if you're here, and I massacred that, but to the election committee.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members? Among members of the audience? There being no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. The next item on the agenda is an announcement for a unanimous written consent for an unbudgeted reserve expenditure. So, as Joyce just alluded to in our procurement policy, when we have items that need to be purchased, generally above $25,000, that are not in the year's budget, the board must approve those items. What we have is a condition, and Walter already alluded to it in his notes, about some severe damage on Peregrine Road, and that work needs to get completed now. It's a safety issue. Luckily, we already had Sunland road construction. They do work for us. They were already under contract because this is the time of year when we do road repairs. But this is an extensive amount of work. They're going to have to mill the area up. I'm not going to go into it, but there's a lot of process to it. So anyway, the amount for that UWC is for up to $82,000. And we say up to because the bid came in for just about $82,000. This was a road that that SaddleBrooke Development Company, while we were still under our 5-year warranty on the roads, they did do work in that area in 2019. And it's in this same area where we're now having some of these problems. So I've addressed the issue with Jack Sarsam, our senior VP from RCI, and he did get back to me yesterday that said that he is moving it forward through the chain. He personally, because it's construction, doesn't have the authority to approve it, but if they do, then they will cost share with us, and so hopefully that cost will go down to $41,000 for us instead of $82. But since we don't know that right now and the work must get done, we put this UWC together for that entire cost. Okay, next item on the agenda is, this is a new item. You won't see it there because it just recently came up. At the same time that the issues with Peregrine were becoming known, we also found an area on Lemon Rock Court that also needs some work. Unfortunately, that wasn't noticed at the same time that the Peregrine bid came through. Excuse me a second. We now have a bid for that amount of work, and that amount of work is for $8,000, but with a $20,000 contingency we'd like to add, because until they actually get in there and start pulling parts of that road apart, we're not going to know exactly what it's going to cost. So I am looking for a motion to approve another reserve budget expenditure for up to $28,000 for the work on Lemon Rock Court. And we have a second? Okay. Is there any discussion among board?
Just one item. In the 2023 budget, I would suggest that we add some type of contingency fund into that budget for these types of items so we don't run over budget in future years.
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, what had happened too was the work that was scheduled to be done for 2022 was already in process for that line item. So there wasn't enough money left to do the work, but that is something to take under consideration to add a contingency factor in there.
The only thing I would point out, this is the second time for the Lemon Rock Court. It's sunk twice, so I don't know what the issues may be underneath there, that they may be more significant when we open it up than we may be believing at the moment.
Thank you. Okay, that's discussion from the board. Any discussion among members in the community? Ron, you'll have to come up to the mic, please.
Ron Vetchke, Unit 42. Question is Robeson obligated as he is on Caribbean?
No, he's not. But we probably will still go back and ask now that we've known this has been identified. They did the earlier work about the same time as they did the work. Was it the same time, Walter, as Peregrine? So it's out of its 5-year warranty also, but we will ping. There being no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. I'm losing my voice.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Mountain View Ballroom sound system replacement. This is something that has been budgeted for in the reserve budget in a couple of years, but given the situation that we are now, it's been requested that we move that up to this year to do that. And so was it about $38,000? About $35,000. So that's the issue there, is to see if we can get that moved up to this year in order to improve our sound system in this facility.
Yeah, the board had already looked at this because it was an item for the reserve budget for 2023. However, we've been having a lot of issues with the sound system here, and in talking with the vendor, there are some items, surprise, that because of supply chain issues may take up to 3 months to get here. So by approving the expenditure to begin this year, the hope is that by the time January comes around, we actually will have the product available so it can be installed. And so that's the reason for moving it up. Chances are actually that the costs are going to be incurred part in 2022 and part in 2023. So may I have a motion to approve moving that budget item into 2022? And a second? The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion among board members?
Walter, I was just going to ask, when this came up, and I think this came up in the reserve budget time, I don't know, maybe before that, but there was a group that were really interested in making sure this did happen. And they had, I think, a lot of support by some pretty smart people about this sound system and what the new system would do, and on and on and on. Are you planning to continue to use that group as a support during this project?
Hello? Yes. All right. Yes. Yes, we are planning to continue to use experts on that system. Right now, Joey, the houseman, just finished putting the system in with Area 51 up at the preserve. So we have a really nice sound system at the preserve now. So Joey will be involved, but they're going to Old Pueblo, and Old Pueblo is the person that's going to install, I'm thinking, this system here. But Old Pueblo has been around for quite a while. They've done a lot of the stuff in here already. So we have people that are experts on it. Joey will be involved so that we make sure we get everything that, all the different capabilities we need. And we'll also, of course, the customer will be involved so we make sure that they're satisfied too.
Customer being the theater?
That would be the theater, yeah, the theater group.
Okay,
One clarification, this is an item we're going to put in the 2022?
yeah, we're moving it here so that we can start the procurement, knowing that the procurement is going to take several months. So that costs may actually start here, but the items will not be charged to the HOA until they actually come in.
All right, so they will not be in the 2023 budget at all?
What I'm anticipating is that we have it started now in 2022, but it'll be probably proportionally a carryover into 2023, because I don't think it'll all get paid for in 2022.
Okay, I just want to make sure that if the majority of the dollars are going to be spent in 2023, that somehow it gets included in 2023 cash flow.
Right, and actually the process is when we have something like that, we had a number of them that carried over from 21 to 22, so that, project is started but it's not completed, or maybe it's close to completion but we haven't paid for it yet. So then we add a carryover budget item to the next year's budget, so that you're not going to be hurting the next year's budget. The budget moves.
So Terry knows to put that in the cash flow for next year.
Yes.
Okay, any discussion among members of the audience? There being no further discussion, all those in favor, aye? The motion is carried. Okay, Don, I think you have a presentation on this one. This is on, oh yeah, they both do. We have 2 new comment periods that we would like to begin, and these are to look at changes in fines associated with some items in the ALC guidelines and some items in the rules and regulations guidelines. And there is a slight presentation on each. We'll go ahead, Don, since I see, no, we'll start here because it says ALC first.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. I'm gonna go up to I prepared roughly 45 pages of slides, so. Good morning. Hopefully you can hear me well. We're looking at updating the fine section of the ALC guidelines, which is what this subject is all about. So I wanted to give you some perspective. It may take a little longer here than you had hoped for, but I think it's important perspective with regard to ALC and their role. The developer, I'm going to read this to you real quickly, but the developer, SDI, envisioned and created a planned community here in SaddleBrooke, specifically around the Sonoran Desert Southwestern theme, incorporating architectural plants, textures, and colors, the surrounding area to create a cohesive and pleasing environment. We all know this. We bought houses here, we own houses here. That's the expectation that we have. The Board of Directors and the Architectural and Landscaping Committee are responsible for assuring that these themes are maintained in our community. If you look at the ALC guidelines, I'm reading from the guidelines, so I'm not making up new words for you to think about, but this is what the guidelines are all about in terms of maintaining our community as we know it and as we bought homes in it. The ALC requirements, next slide. We're doing the slide. There you go. The ALC requirements and guidelines are used as a basis for decisions by the ALC for approval or disapproval of permit applications, as required for the initial installation of modifications to landscaping or exterior architectural changes. This is what the CCRs are kind of all about. Additionally, they are intended to protect and preserve the appearance, aesthetics, and value of our community, including adherence to the developer model elevation exterior designs. A primary goal of the ALC, Architectural and Landscaping Committee, is to assist homeowners in meeting these board-approved ALC requirements and guidelines. These guidelines are posted on our website. As you know, we just a few minutes ago updated those guidelines and approved those guidelines after a lot of work. So these guidelines are constantly evolving. As you know, we're building roughly 25 houses a year or bringing 25 new homes into our HOA every year, probably for the next 4 or 5 years, I would envision. Those new homes come with new characteristics, and that's the reason the guidelines are kind of an evolving animal for us. HOA 1, not so much. They probably haven't built a house in HOA 1 for maybe, who knows, 15 years, 20 years, I don't know. But we are constantly evolving as an ALC with new architectural features and all kinds of stuff. So our guidelines are always evolving. And it's appreciation to the ALC committee for keeping us in touch and up to date with that. Speaking of that, Vicki did a great job. Thank you for the guideline update. I just wanted to also thank, I'm the board liaison to ALC. It's been a pleasure of mine to get to know this crowd and also understand all the things that they go through. These people are volunteers. They are homeowners, just like all of us. Put in hours and hours of work to try and maintain this consistency in our homes, in our home community, as required by the CC&Rs that we all signed off on when we bought our home, and the guidelines that they talk about. ALC and you, let me just give you, ALC is charged to maintain this, and it's required by the CCRs, I told you that. ALC deals with homeowners' lots and what's on the lot. Oh, sorry. Who's not keeping up with me?
Next slide.
Okay, next slide. That's it. ALC, here we're back. I told you about the first one already. ALC deals with homeowners' lots and what's on the lot. I thought that was kind of a cool statement, actually. It's kind of hard to read. But it's really about the lot. It's about what's on the lot, the house, the landscaping, and all of that. That's what ALC deals with. We don't deal with common area. We don't deal with roads. ALC committee is first and foremost here to help homeowners interpret the guidelines and make proposed changes as home building evolves. I mentioned that earlier. That's their primary focus, helping homeowners meet these guidelines. Fines are not punitive in nature. There's nothing punitive about these fines, but they act as a catalyst for homeowners to correct noted violations. People do kind of come outside the rails once in a while in terms of ALC issues, and fines are appropriate for those violations. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what's in the current ALC guidelines that we just approved and what we're proposing. And again, this is going to go out to homeowners. This is a next slide. There you go. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, background for the current changes. Current fine structures. When you really read it, you get into the detail of it. The current fine structure does not address timelines for violation resolution. There's a lot of, here's your fine, but when is it that we expect you to make that violation correction? It's really not well stated in the current guidelines, so we want to update that. Finding some homeowners just ignore guidelines. They just ignore violation. Okay, here's a fine. They keep on trucking and nothing really occurs, so we want to try to address that as well. Homeowner violations can affect our HOA in terms of appearance, overall consistency, and home values, if not corrected. So these are why there's fines, unfortunately. We need written standards for violation resolution by HOA 2 in case homeowner does not address a violation in a reasonable timeline. There are occurrences, of course, we've been in an HOA for many, many years, but there are occurrences where people just ignore it. And finally, eventually, the HOA has to step in and resolve the issue either by hiring a contractor or by doing the work themselves. So we're trying to make that in plainer English for these fines. Does that all make sense to you? We all good so far? Okay, let's go to the first one. This is about 90-day landscaping. And you can read this first, what it says. When it says current, that's what's in the current guidelines. Basically, it says if you don't do your landscaping and get a permit, you get a fine of $125. If after 120 days from close of escrow, COE is close of escrow, no permit has been applied, then you get a $250 fine assessed until the permit has been issued. What we're suggesting is new homeowners have 90 days after close to complete their landscaping required by HOA2 CC&Rs. These are in the CC&Rs, everybody's had them, everybody's got to have followed along for those requirements. Before any work may begin, landscape plans must be approved and permit must be issued by ALC. Makes sense, where you start digging holes and putting stuff in the ground, the ALC needs to permit that. If work cannot be concluded by the end of the 90-day period, extensions may be granted on an individual basis. The ALC is here to work with homeowners. This is not a punitive system. If you communicate with the ALC about issues that come up, your landscaper broke a tractor or whatever issues come along, they're there to help and to work with you. So nobody's going to be jumping on the fine business right away. We really need to try to work together through that process. However, and there's always a however, if no permit has been granted for landscaping or landscaping work completed in the 90 days, fine's going to go to $250 instead of $125. We need something going on there. We need permits. We need to know you're active. And these homes that are being sold need to get landscaping in front of them well within that 90-day period. There's no reason that shouldn't happen. If no permit has been issued or work completed by 120 days, 4 months after you closed on escrow, you get a $500 fine, and thereafter on a monthly basis. So if you're just doing nothing and you're not getting a permit and you're doing nothing, there are consequences for those actions. We believe that's important. We believe that getting your home landscaped in the front especially is very critical to the look and feel of this community. At any time after the 120 days, then the HOA2 can step in and figure out what's going on and maybe do even more fines or other issues with that homeowner. Okay, next one, next slide. Next slide, here we go. Okay, this is about weeds. Everybody's got weeds, we all got weeds. Nobody wants a weed, but we got them. The CC&Rs require that no weeds, dead trees or plants, rubbish or debris of any kind can be placed or allowed to accumulate upon any lot, and that no trees or shrubs be allowed to overhang the streets, sidewalks, or your neighbor's wall. When a report of violation is received of the property, then the ALC verifies that the problem exists and sends a notice of violation, and it'll be to the homeowner. Fines for the notice of violation not brought into compliance within 21 days is $125. So if you don't fix it, you get a $125 fine. If you think about the monsoons, the summer months, by the time you get a notice of violation, you got weeds. That's why you got it, right? So you got weeds, who knows how high they are, but they're pretty obnoxious. Now you got 21 days to fix the weeds. By that point in time, they're probably above your windows potentially. But anyway, it's all ugly stuff, and we're trying to speed this process up. We don't really know why people typically, and I will say this, that 99.9% of all people have probably never got a violation from the ALC. Everybody takes care of stuff, right? There are certain people, maybe they're out of town, maybe they're traveling, who knows, that their yards just get out of control. So the proposed is that we're going to issue a warning for 7 days to correct the problem. So, hey, you got a problem. If you don't correct it on day 8 and to day 15, the original NOV date, you get a $50 fine. And that continues to drive up, as you see up here. The big deal is at the end of this statement, and the big deal is if after all of this occurs, the HOA now has the right to hire a contractor to correct a violation. Contractor fees and a $250 registration fee will be charged to the homeowner. So you got time to fix all this, and again, if you let ALC know that you've got issues, they'll work with you on all this. But if you're not really listening to anybody, then after about 21 days of these weeds growing and growing and growing, the HOA2 can, by CCR, take over and maintain your yard for you with a significant fee. Nobody wants to do that, but I will tell you, we have had to do that. Over the history of the HOA, it's had to be done. So I just want to make sure that's clearly stated in the guidelines. Next slide. The ALC has the authority to issue to homeowners a notice of violations for a variety of other issues, not just what we talked about. But here's kind of the deal, and it's really kind of the deal before, and that is, when does HOA2, when can they come and take over a violation and correct that violation? And that's really, this has a lot more days in it, because typically these aren't weed issues, these are issues of paint, these are issues of who knows, lots of stuff. There's 1,000 stories about violations in this regard. But basically it says you got a lot of days here to be able to fix your violation. You'll get fines along the way, but if you don't fix it, then the HOA has the right to come in and paint the wall, fix the whatever, and charge you back for that. Clearly stated in the guidelines. And I think that's been an important missing component in the prior guidelines. So the team, the ALC committee, felt that these were important to make sure homeowners understood it. Chelsea deals with this all the time, so it's really nice for her to be able to refer specifically to a guideline and in clear language. So, last one. This is another big deal, and I hardly believe it's a big deal, but it seems to be a big deal. Fine for work without a permit. Gee, Jimmy told me he could do some work, so I'm going to have him build a casita. I'm not going to get a permit because it's really a little casita. Nobody's going to care, so we're going to build a casita. Well, you need permits. You need county permits and you need ALC permits for any of that kind of activity. And there is, right or wrong, a lot of activity that does take place during the year that are unpermitted. So we're trying to put a little more aggressive approach to that issue and try to make sure homeowners know that there's somebody behind them that's going to be pushing them for, you need these permits, and if you work without a permit, there is a violation cost for you in that regard. Work without a permit that required Pinal County permit, which is even bigger than our permit, and an ALC permit is a $250 fine, $500 per week thereafter until these permits are approved. You can see, and then there's an ALC, if it's only an ALC permit required, you can see those fines are a little bit less. At the bottom, in either case, an ALC or required Pinal County permit must be obtained to satisfy the violation before that violation can come on, whether it's work in progress or work that has been completed. So this is the changes. We're going to send them out for comment, so we hope that we do get some comment, but more importantly, my hope is that people understand that there's attention to this issue, and if you do work around your home, you really need to call the ALC if you don't understand what the guidelines are, or at least read the guidelines before you start it. So anyway, that's my presentation. I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, Don. Don will come up and present on proposed changes in the fine structure for our rules and regulations. Let's do them both at this, if it's okay.
Good. Good morning. First, my apologies for being late to the meeting. I got hung up on a budget call with Club Life and forgot to continue to look at my watch. Within the Rules and Regulations Committee, one of the things that has been a subject that we needed to get into and review were common area violations. Despite numerous attempts on the part of the various communication avenues that we have to inform residents that one cannot weed, prune, trim, spray, or rearrange elements within the common area, we continue to have violations of that policy. What we're presenting today is informative. It's not, no decisions have been made, so take it in that light that we're simply talking about what potential opportunities may be in front of us to restructure some issues that we see. The CCRs and the rules, next. There we are. The CCRs and the rules and regulation guidance for violations and the cost or fines assessed can be confusing, and we're going to try to attempt to achieve clarity and simplicity around this subject. In the CCR's Article 10, Section 2, page 48 states that the association has the authority, as Dan was pointing out, to assess homeowners for maintenance expenses incurred if the association has to repair or restore a common area to its condition prior to a resident causing willful or negligent damage to the area. However, specifically in that article, there is no fine schedule referred to. So currently in the Rules and Regulations, Article 9, Section 902, states any significant defacing of common areas, golf courses, as determined by common area supervision or the director of golf courses and common areas will result in the filing of a vandalism property damage complaint with the Pinal County Sheriff. Any member or homeowner violating this rule will be responsible for the costs that the SBHOA2 incurs to bring the area back to its original state if possible. And here we get into the mention, or the first mention beyond the cost of repairing, of a number that is a fine, and that states defacing of trees or other plant life results in a $500 fine, plus naturally the cost to restore the area. We have had recent common area cases where, in a couple of cases, some residents decided to rearrange some rocks from behind the common area closer to their wall for decorative purposes or whatever. That violation involved relocating those rocks and along their border wall. In this case, the CCR allows an assessment to the resident of the actual cost to restore the area to the previous condition, but again does not state specific fine. The quote from an approved landscaper was $1,000, which seemed to be excessive, at least to me, for the work that was involved. Since the violation did not deface any trees or plant life, the $500 fine in Rules and Regulations could not be assessed. When a violation, next slide, when a violation of the common area is filed by the Common Area Management, the Rules and Regulations Committee shall investigate the alleged violation, determine if that violation has significantly damaged a common area of the HOA2. If they deem that it has occurred and is significant, then the committee shall notify the resident of the violation, provide the resident with all the facts or rationale that were used to determine that a violation has occurred. Then we look at the administrative database. We will look at the administrative database to try to determine if this is a first, second, or even a third case violation by this same resident. The Rules and Regulation Committee would be charged with scheduling a hearing with the resident to allow the resident to plead his or her case. Schedule of fines would be as follows. A first offense, the resident shall pay the actual costs of remediation plus a fine of $250. And then if the occurrences continue, the fine portion goes up rather steeply. The second offense is the actual cost of remediation plus $750, and the final third expense is a $1,000 fine, and at that point a complaint would be filed with Pinal County Sheriff's Office for property vandalism. In the remediation bid, if the management of the association is to secure the bid through the landscapers that we have on our approved list, they must submit a minimum 3 bids, show just cause for selecting one bid over the other than the lowest, if they choose one that is not the lowest cost bid. And then if the resident, on the other hand, is asked to secure the landscaper, that landscaper must be current in his licenses, bond insurance, etc., provide proof of that currency prior to starting any work. The landscaper should submit a short plan description of the work to be done to ensure that the common area management finds it to be satisfactory. And then finally, on the next slide, the resident, there's a board appeal process that we do currently and would continue prior to the commencement of remediation work. The resident shall have the right to appeal the judgment of the Rules and Regulations Committee to the board for final review. The resident does so by submitting a request in writing within 10 days of the receipt of the NOV by the Rules and Regulations Committee. So that's kind of some of the thought process that has been proposed. It will go out for comment. And, we certainly welcome all comments on the issue of common areas. I know it's a hot subject today, and there will be an opportunity for you to supply your input relative to how we as an association deal with the problem of violations in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Okay.
Can we ask questions on this?
Once we move in second, then you can ask questions, and then we will vote. Okay. So do I have a motion to put these out for a 30-day comment period?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, board discussion.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. When you talk about first offense, second offense, and third offense, is there a time gap in that? So if I was made an offense and then 20 years later had another offense, is that a second offense or no? $750?
Is this the, oh, this is on,
For the
CC9.
common maintenance.
well, I wonder if I'd be around her 20 years from now.
I won't even.
I will be, I will.
Yes, that would be number 2.
Okay, all right. And then the appeal process, is that appeal to the full board or to a committee of the board?
There's a subcommittee of the board
Subcommittee.
that has the appeals.
It would be on the appeals, okay.
The appeals group.
Okay. And then Dan, on one question on your ALC, you talked about a $500 fine, and then is it a $500 fine each day afterwards? I can't remember exactly what slide it was.
I thought it was a week, actually.
It says 500, and then thereafter on,
Monthly, that's a monthly, and they're a monthly.
okay, just want to get that.
Yeah, that's a monthly. There is a daily, I think there's a $25 a day thing that kicks in. I can't remember exactly which one, sorry. Yes, Chuck.
Dan, on the same slide that Campbell was looking at, halfway down it says, however, if no permit has been granted or landscaping work completed by 90 days, I assume that means if no permit or extension granted. Is that correct?
That's right, the extension, yeah. It probably does need a little wordsmithing in that regard because extensions would continue it on, but yes.
Okay, I would just add those 2 words to that.
Yeah. Yeah, Chelsea have that in your file, so there wouldn't be any NOV on that.
The only question that I thought of is, when we get to that level of the $500 per month, if it involves a Pinal County permit, as we found out during the pickleball experience and several others, I mean, they took years to get permits
Absolutely.
up there. So
I think
we have
that's a
any
good-
avenue where that stops.
You know, it's not written here, but again, this really all boils down to homeowners talking to ALC. I don't think anybody's going to get a fine if you're communicating that very issue on something. Right now, we've got quite a few that just aren't talking. I mean, nobody calls, nobody says anything. Don, I got a question for you. I think all this is good stuff. One of the things that bothers me a lot, though, and homeowners are doing it, and it's not called out here, they're using chemicals. And I think the use of chemicals is a more egregious kind of defacing of our property than the idea of trimming a tree, moving a rock, that kind of stuff. And we have, on the golf course, many homeowners that are using chemicals in the common area. And I wonder if rules and regs should maybe segregate an offense using chemicals from all others. And I'm not telling you how to write it, and I don't know that anybody else agrees with this, but when I play golf, I see there are lots that it is obvious that the homeowner is using some kind of chemical to deter any vegetation, not just something, but any, from that lot. And I think for me, that is much more aggressive in violation than maybe some others. But that's just my opinion, so I'll let you weigh in or move on.
I would certainly take it under consideration. I understand what you're describing, and am, like you, in agreement that practice is probably taking place from time to time. But at the same time, we spray that same edge as part of golf course maintenance. So I don't know that the chemical's any different than cutting it, but
It's a lot different. There are. Well, all right. Well, I just think there are people that take a chemical, some kind of chemical spray all the way down to the golf course, and they spray it, and it's absolutely vegetation free. So I just, you can see it pretty easily. But anyway, we'll get the comments on it. So.
right. Thank you.
Any further questions? Members of the audience? There being no questions? Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Ron Betchme, Unit 42. Just as a general idea, how do you get notified? How does a report go to either of these committees that there's a violation? For example, I don't know the rules about signage, but I thought the rules were no political signs until some date prior to the election, and you just driving down Desert Bluff today, there were at least 3 political signs up, and I don't believe the period has started yet. So
Actually, it has, because there was a primary. And so if there was a primary and you can put signs up for the primary, and then if the people in the primary make it through the primary and get to go to the next level, or the actual full election, they get to keep those signs up until the full election.
There's also early voting.
I don't
Early voting starts weeks before the actual election date, so they can have it so many days prior to the start of early voting.
That's good. I mean, if there are rules, maybe we should know them. But how do we know who is going to notify these committees that there's a violation?
Okay.
Is the patrol going around and saying there's a violation? They don't have a permit. I don't see a green sign that there's a permit. just information about how this is supposed to work.
Well, it will stay the same as it has. There's various methods. So if somebody is complaining about somebody else's yard, let's say if these are ALC we're talking about, where it has to do with a person's personal property, if you want to file a complaint about that person's yard or whatever it is that's an ALC issue, you do file a complaint, and by Arizona statute, you need to sign that complaint. Once that complaint is received, it goes to the ALC committee. The ALC committee goes and investigates it further. If they agree, then the notice of violation comes out of the ALC committee. During this time of year, summertime, patrol, as they're driving around, will take, just in their normal driving, if they see egregious levels of weeds in people's yards, they will write those down and pass those over to ALC. And then once again, ALC goes and verifies that and sends out the notice of violation, and then the appeal process is through ALC. For rules and regulations, there are several ways. Once again, a complaint may come in from a homeowner when they've noticed that another homeowner has violated that policy. Same thing, they must give their name. This is in statute. And then that process starts, depending if it's in common area, generally it goes to our common area maintenance team for them to validate it, and then the process goes to and then the process goes to ALC, rules and regs to start the notice of violation. Okay, no further. Walter.
Yes, I've got one. Walter Yazzie, Mountain View Admin Office, office number 1. Don, on your remediation bids, I think maybe we need to put a level of what their license and insurance is there, because we have a certain level, kind of steep for a small contractor, but I guess we should probably state what that level is.
I have a question. Kate, is it on? Yeah. Kate Tornay, 3577. When I have a secretarial kind of change, do I just put that into you when you send those things out for your 30 days?
Yeah, Diane will send out the comment period and give you the link so that you can...
Well, one is so simple. On your current, you said notice of violation, N_o, capital A. But when you did, what did you do? Proposed, you just said NOV. NOV?
NOV is what I did.
Yeah, but then you did not say what NOV was.
Okay,
So-
we'll make sure it gets wordsmithed, if it even gets to the point after we get the comments.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there being no further comments, all those in favor to put this out for a 30-day comment period, please respond aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a vote to approve transitioning of unit rep committee to a council. So just a brief history. Prior to transition, the unit reps worked with an organization called STPO, and at that time, they functioned and did their duties through the STPO. After transition, the STPO no longer existed, and so after a while, we brought the unit reps in as a committee with their primary function of being a committee of the board was to help with the distribution of important notices and information that we wanted to have go to our homeowners. Since that time, as with the different software we have multiple opportunities for the HOA to present information to our homeowners. We have Monday message, we have email blasts, we have for the record. And so from the point of needing unit reps to also perform that function, it's really not needed. However, the unit reps themselves and what they do provide their units is very important. So basically, this is a vote to approve transitioning the unit reps from a committee of the board to a council of the, within the association. May I have a motion? And a second? Okay. Any discussion among board members? Any discussion among members of the audience? There being no discussion, okay, Ron, or who? Can't see.
It's not wrong. Riley Jackson.
Okay, yeah, oh, hi, Riley, I can't, sun's coming through. No, you're okay. Riley, come on up, please.
Riley Jackson, Unit 50. What's the difference between a committee and a council?
The committee does not, the council does not report to the board of directors.
Does it report to anybody? I mean,
No, they function as its own entity. Now, the board still, the HOA itself, they'll still work with the HOA to do member information when requested by them, like Walter when he does his seal coating and the like. He notices those unit reps so they can get the information out to their homeowners.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. We're getting through here, folks. We really are. Getting close. The next item on the agenda is some information presented by Dawn on some cost savings that the HOA will be gaining.
Okay, the good news, this is a lot shorter than the last presentation, and also more positive. Next slide, please. Last year, November of 2021, we ordered a lot of equipment from Toro, which is one of the major golf course turf equipment manufacturers. In fact, I believe it was about 28 pieces of equipment. Next. At that time, because of what's been happening with inflation and supply chain, we were given price terms called price, time, and shipment. This has become very common within all of industry. Some may call it price gouging, some may call it reality. But what happens is somebody could quote you $10,000 for a piece of equipment today. 9 months later, when they ship it to you, the price is $15,000. So your budgeting processes and that have to have some best guess leeway as to what is going to occur as far as pricing and inflation and supply chain and all those issues that are being discussed at the national level. Next. Since November, Toro has implemented 4 price increases on their products. So that's through early August. So in a period of 9 months, they put through 4 price increases. Next. Demand for their products is very high, and inflation has impacted them, and thus their pricing has moved up, as I say, by 4 different times between that 9-month period. Next. historically, we were able to purchase some level of, or able to get some level of discount because we were still buying through a Robeson program. The level of that discount, next, really is not quantified. I don't know exactly what % discount we got, and it's extremely difficult to try and figure out what it may have been. Working under Club Life, next, the national accounts buyer took the list of equipment that had not yet been delivered to us, and in negotiations with Toro, was able to get their price discount assigned on equipment that we had already ordered. Next. During that time period, some of the pieces, this 28 pieces we ordered were delivered. They came under the old pricing, but the new items, and we'll go to the next slide. The new items that had not yet been delivered at the time that they negotiated for us were in 3 areas: the reserve fund purchases, capital improvement fund, and leases. And you can say that the manufacturer's sale suggested retail price, which is basically the price that they are getting on most of their equipment through especially small customers. With their national account, it does change dramatically. The purchases under the reserve fund were reduced by $63,000 out of 202. I believe we only had one item in the capital fund that was on that list. It went from 12.3 to 9.2. The majority of the items that we had were on lease. And those items were the suggested retail price of $1,378,000. We were able to achieve, using the discount that Club Life and Club Corps have, a savings of $343,000 on those pieces of equipment. Now, before you go looking at next month's financials to try and find it, we need to understand how these savings work. First of all, on refund purchases, they will be booked or will be recognized at the time that the delivery is made. Same with the capital fund. However, on leases, the savings on the leases will be spread across the term of the lease. So you won't see it in a lump sum, but you will see it each year. If it's a 4-year lease, it'll be spread over 4 years. But any way that we look at it, it is a positive step in being able to try to reduce our cost that we have. Next slide. So again, the true cost of avoidance is the difference between manufacturer's retail price and Club Corps pricing, $409,000. The 4 price increases implemented significantly raised our purchase cost, and basically, when you look at it, what we have achieved is the negotiation of the discount by Club Life eliminated the impact of those 4 price increases and brought us back close to or slightly under what our budget was. The majority of the savings, again, are in leased equipment, which will be seen over the life of the contract. Next, just want to say thanks to Club Life for working on this for us. We hope that they can find many, many more. We need them. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. The next item on our agenda is our treasurer's report and 2022 reserve study. And this presentation will be given by our treasurer, Joyce Howard.
Morning. Still morning for a few more minutes. Good morning, everybody. So now I'll say, for the fun part, the numbers. Okay? So the treasurer's report. These are our funds here. We have 3 funds. We have our operating fund, which pays all of our normal operating expenditures, our payroll, food, etc. We have the reserve fund that's used for major repairs and replacements of our assets. And we have our capital improvement fund, which is used for capital items that aren't necessarily funded by something else, but that will benefit the whole community. So as of the end of August, you can see that we had about $12 million total in those funds. And this has not changed very much in total from what we had as of the end of March when the last presentation I gave. Next slide, please. The reserve fund totals $5,826,000 at the end of August. We have a cash portion there that's 34%. We have a little bit in money markets. The biggest portion is in treasuries, and then we also have some corporate bonds in our Sonoran fund. The treasuries is something that we've started investing in this year as the interest rates have started to go up. And we have laddered those treasuries, and we have everything from 3-month to 12-month notes that will be maturing over the next few quarters. We have a couple coming up in November and a couple more in February of next year. And the rates on those vary anywhere from 0.779% to 2.8% with the treasuries that we've purchased more recently. Next slide, please. This is showing our expenditures from the reserve fund. The red bars, the first two, those are our actual amounts that have been spent so far this year. And then the blue bars are what's forecasted for the last 2 quarters. So we've got a total over the year of about $4 million in expenditures. You can see that it's pretty heavily loaded there in the 3rd quarter. Major items there are for road work, $757,000. That's the work to repave Mountain View. And also the tennis courts, which are pretty close to being done. And that's another $310,000 to redo those tennis courts with post-tension structure. Another significant item in there is the Desert View Theater renovation that Therese talked about earlier, and that's $168,000. So those things are all coming and will be paid, we think, in the 3rd quarter, although some of them could slip into the next quarter. The 4th quarter is also pretty heavy, and it totals a little bit over $1 million in the 4th quarter, and that includes some asphalt paving, patch and seal coating, the work that we were talking about earlier for Peregrine and Lemon Rock. Also, we're anticipating that we will have at least a partial payment of the golf carts in the 4th quarter. That's may not happen in the 4th quarter, it may slip into the 1st quarter of next year. And there's various golf equipment as Don was just talking about. So if that all comes in the 4th quarter as we expect, there's another nearly $500,000 in there. That includes things that, the Toro equipment that Don was talking about, but also some other equipment, not from Toro. Okay, next slide, please. So here is our projected reserve fund balance. The blue bars are what we have in checking and savings, basically our cash type of position. The orange bars are our investments, and the gray bars are the total. So you can see, if you look at this orange bar here, you can see it really hasn't changed. So that what that's telling us is that we have been able to make the purchases from our cash and our savings account through the 3rd quarter. But once we get to the 4th quarter, you can see that this bar has kind of come down from here. So that means we're going to have to take some of our investments and liquidate those in order to pay for some of these expenditures that are coming due in the 4th quarter. At this point, we are anticipating that we'll have about $1.5 million of our treasuries coming due in the 4th quarter, and we'll probably reinvest about $500,000 of that and use the other $1 million to help pay for the expenditures. But of course, the timing is everything, so some of this could happen next year. Next slide, please. Capital Improvement Fund, same thing here. We have a significant portion in cash, a little tiny bit in money markets, and about $1.2 million in treasuries for a total of $1.7 million. Again, these are invested, the treasuries are invested in very similar type treasuries as the reserve fund, although we do have one that's a bit longer because we're not anticipating to need so much of the CIF fund for expenditures in the near future. So we are actually getting 3.2% on about $600,000 treasury investment there. Next slide, please. So our expenditures so far, we haven't spent anything in the first half of the year. In the third quarter, we have two things in there. One is the pickleball construction that we promised to pay for, and that's about $310,000. And the other is the golf cart structure, and that's in there for $245,000, but there are still permitting issues that are going on, so that could very well slip into the fourth quarter. Actually, I have it in the fourth quarter, so I was clairvoyant. Next slide, please. So again, here's our balance. Again, the blue bars are the cash and the cash basically. The orange bars are our investments, and the gray is the total. So you can see our investments are just coming along here. We're not anticipating to have to liquidate any of the investments this year for any CIF projects. Next slide, please. So just in summary, the treasuries are laddered. That gives us some flexibility so that we have something maturing basically every quarter, so that if we do need to change our minds about how long we want to invest it, we have that opportunity. This will be taking into consideration the timing of any expenditures. As I said, about $1 million we're estimating to be liquidated from the reserve fund to be used for expenditures. CIF, we won't have to do that at all. And of course, everything here is all tentative. The timing could vary on any of these things. And basically, overall, this position has really not changed much since the presentation in May. And that covers the treasurer's report. Okay, now I'm on to the reserve study. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have, as I said, a reserve fund that I think you're all aware of, used for major repairs and replacements. We set aside money in there so that those costs are basically spread as far as how the homeowners pay through their dues. It's spread over time by having this reserve fund and setting that money aside. And the money in the reserve fund basically comes from our dues. That's the most significant portion. But a portion of our CIF also goes into the reserve fund. So we have the community service fee that is levied on home resales equal to 1 year's dues, and that money, part of it goes into the CIF fund and part of it goes into the reserve fund, and that's as determined by the board what that allocation portion will be, and they determine that during the budget process. The board can also make discretionary funds into the reserve fund. Now, the reserve study is something that we do about every 3 years, and it's really something that is of critical importance to assessing our reserve fund's adequacy to cover our expenditures, and it's really used as a budget planning tool. It's going to identify any of the assets that we have, estimate future expenditures for those assets and repairs, and most critically, it recommends a funding plan. So not just what you're going to spend, but how you're going to fund that reserve fund in order to be able to have those funds available when you need them. Next Next slide, please. So the reserve study process, we select an outside firm to do this. So we are not doing this on our own. We have the experts come in. So we went out and got bids from several companies this year, and we selected Reserve Advisors, which is the firm that has done our last reserve study as well. So they had sort of a base of knowledge there, which was important. And what they do is they come out and they physically look at our assets and evaluate their condition. They spend a few days out here working with our staff, looking at the air conditioners, the roofs, and so on. They then estimate what the useful life is of those assets, the remaining useful life, and what the future costs might be to replace those. They have certain sources of information that they draw on. They have a proprietary database. They use historical costs, and they look at other published sources, and they also talk to the staff, because the staff will often have much more current information. The roads is not something that the reserve advisors looked at. We engaged a separate company to take a look at the roads that specializes in this, and that is Kimley Horn, and they did that in 2021. So we just give that reserve study, that road study, over to the reserve advisors, and they incorporate it in the reserve study so that we can figure out how to fund everything, including the roads. They apply an inflation factor when they're figuring out what the future costs might be, and they start with what they think the costs are today, and then they've used an inflation factor of 3% for the remainder of the study. And they, as I said, they develop a funding plan recommendation, and they actually have a little bit of interest that's earned on any of our investments, and they're using 2% there. Next slide, please. So the reserve study report is a huge, huge report. It's available online, and it's now posted. And in it, you'll find a description of the assets, an evaluation of the condition, preventative maintenance notes, and the reserve advisor's assessments of what the priority is. Is this something that really needs to be done immediately? Is this something that's in pretty good shape and can wait a while, etc.? They have, in this section, they have pictures, they have specifics on particular assets. It's just really a wealth of data. There are 598 components identified, and this covers all of our complexes here: Mountain View, Desert View, Preserve, golf courses, roads, and property site. And by property site, I mean things like all of the common area maintenance equipment, the common area facility, the pickleball courts, our lights in the parking lots, things like that. And they also have given us a spending profile that goes out for 30 years and a funding profile that goes out for 30 years. Next slide, please. Okay, so how does this compare to the one we did 3 years ago? Well, it got a lot bigger. So what we had over a 30-year time period in the last study was a total of about $99 million to be spent. This one's coming to $136 million. So this is a 37% increase. So why did that happen? Inflation. No, just part of it. Part of it is inflation. But part of it is golf. When we did this in 2019, we didn't have the level of experience that we have with golf now. Now we're at the point where we've gotten some real estimates on the golf infrastructure because we're going to be renovating the Mountain View Golf Course. So we have some real estimates, some real numbers in our hands for what does it cost to replace the bunkers? What does it cost to, replace the irrigation system, that type of thing. And so that is quite a bit higher than what we had anticipated when we did the study back 3 years ago. Next slide, please. So here's a 10-year period. The study goes out for 30 years, but after about 10 years, it's not as meaningful as the first few years, of course. So over that 10-year period, the old study was showing 32 million. The new study is 44 million. And we are looking at some significant changes in golf and some significant changes in the timing of those expenditures. So you can see the blue bars here are with the old study, and the orange bars are the new study. So you can see right here in 2023, this is way higher. Well, that's golf. That's the golf renovation project. And the way that that was in the old study was it was kind of spread out over time. So the bunkers were going to be done over 5 years, and the tees were going to be done over 5 years, and the irrigation was going to be done over 2 years. And when we got down to it, we said that doesn't really make sense. If you're going to tear up the golf course, do it all at once. And so things that had been planned for even as back into 2020 and 2021, we're now going to be seeing in 2023. So that's one of the big things here. So we're seeing the golf renovation here. This spike here is the greens at the preserve, as well as the irrigation pumps at the preserve. The preserve renovation is out here in 29, so that's this spike here. And these other spikes are like what you're seeing here and to here. You see that the old study was actually higher than what we have in the new study, but that has a lot to do with roads work being moved around. So golf is our biggest single expenditure, and roads is right behind it. And roads moves around. We got a new study as well, and so this is, you know, what the plan is at this point in time. Next slide, please. So this breaks down those same 10-year expenditures by the actual complex. So we've got the Mountain View, Desert View, Preserve, Property Site. You can see those all are kind of small as compared to way over here. We've got golf and roads is here. If you add up all of these, they equal what we spent on golf over 10 years. Next slide, please. Now this is how the reserve advisors are recommending that we fund our reserve fund, And the blue bar is how the old study worked, and the orange bar is what the new one is showing. So you would expect that since we have so much more expenditures, that we have to have more funding to cover that. So this is the profile here. Over same kind of increase over the 10-year period. The old study had $30 million in funding, and the new study has 41. Next slide, please. This is a slide that we've shown this format a few times, which shows this is just the 2022 study. The blue bars here are what we're funding. The orange bars are what we're spending. So again, this is golf. You can see our funding profile, we're going up, flatlining, then we come back down. And as far as expenditures, they're going up and down. And I do want to point out here that this is just what the reserve advisors recommend. And they are not including in their recommendation anything that comes from the CIF, anything that is the golf replenishment. You may recall that we took a couple $1 million out of our reserve fund when we purchased the golf course and pledged to replenish that $100,000 a year. So that's not in here either. And of course, we also have the option of doing some discretionary allocations. So this funding profile is just what the reserve advisors recommend if they knew nothing about the other sources of funding. Next slide, please. So when you put that all together, the gray line is added onto this. This is our reserve fund balance. And you can see that it is hitting a pretty low point here in 2026. And that is the result of the spending on the golf course, Mountain View renovation, and then the preserve pumps and greens kick in here. And so it goes up and down. But again, this looks pretty low. This frankly is lower than I'm comfortable with our reserve fund getting. But it does not include the CIF allocation. It does not include the golf replenishment funding or any other discretionary allocations that we could have. if we were to continue to allocate to the CIF, to the reserve fund at the same rate that we're doing this year, over the 10 years, that would add about $1.3 million to the funding. And if we are to continue to replenish our golf loan at $100,000 a year, that's another $1 million over that 10-year period. So this looks pretty bad, but it doesn't include everything. Next slide, please. So in summary, this is posted to the website. You can find it under the financial reports and then other reports. It's a big, big thing that's got a lot of narrative to it, but it also has the 30-year schedules listing every piece of equipment, every air conditioner, every roof, etc., in their schedule over the next 30 years for expenditures. A lot of information. That's available for your reading pleasure. What we do with this reserve study now is we're in the process of preparing the 2023 budget and also a 5-year plan. This reserve study will be the starting point for our reserve budget. The staff is currently looking at it, evaluating what they think our needs are, because again, this is recommended, but our staff has a little closer look at this, so they take a look and say, well, we think we can do that next year, or we need to do this other thing now. So they take a look at that and use their judgment, as well as with the expected costs. The Finance Committee is in the process of reviewing the budget requests, and they're going to make a recommendation to the board on that. And there will be a town hall meeting scheduled for November 2nd that will cover the operating budget, the reserve budget, the funding of those, and dues levels, etc. So that's November 2nd. And at November 18th meeting, the board was planning to approve the budget. So I hope to see you there. Thank you for your patience during the numbers and the graphs.
Thank you, Joyce.
Joyce, can I ask you a question? Will you answer it if I ask it? Okay. When you presented the reserve study information, which I think is at the heart of all this, you had a 3% inflation rate. Is all of these numbers still using that same inflation rate that came in on the reserve study?
Yes, the base number that they start off is what they think, the reserve advisors think the current price would be if you bought it today. And then every year thereafter it's inflated 3%. They do not have the capability to modify inflation rates by year.
Okay. We'll now move on.
Don do something, because this was more fun. He's saving money.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, the reserve study as presented, you said the majority of the dollars were related to golf. Was there any impact by the company that did the reserve study for the discounts that we get from Club Life?
No, that is not in there. This Club Life came on board after they had done their study.
So are we going to adjust it going forward when we roll this into the budget process?
Absolutely.
Okay, we're down to announcements. Our next general manager coffee will be Wednesday, October 5th in the Ballroom West. The next board meeting is Friday, November 18th. That is our last board meeting of the year, and as Joyce mentioned, it's when we approve the 2023 budget. And for the record, will be out this Friday, September 30th. Are there any additional board member comments? There being none, this meeting is adjourned. We're open for member comments. If you wish to make a comment, please come up to the microphone, state your name, unit, lot number, and you have up to 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, there being no further comments, go have some lunch. Thank you for attending.